In England, get this everyone, the schools now, of course, all of these kids, they've been out of school for quite some time because of COVID. Well, it turns out now that was not the end of the lockdown distant learning after all, because you've got a situation now where you've got more than 100 schools and colleges potentially going to have to shut. This is all because of a type of concrete. Daniel, I'll come to you. I shall ignore you no more, because many people are saying that your government has put children at risk. This is all around the fact that this concrete can be prone to what they're calling sudden collapse. You've seen a school in Kent, a primary school back in 2018, where that exact thing did happen. Why are we in this mess?
Well, it's true that dangerous materials, people didn't know they were dangerous at the time, were used in the 60s, 70s and 80s. And it's true, no doubt, that action should have been taken earlier. Let's remember that the primary responsibility for maintaining schools lies with the local authorities or the educational authorities for those areas, rather than directly with the government. And we're talking here about, I believe, 105 schools out of a total of 20,000. And I understand that in many of those cases, not the whole school will have to close, but just a part of it, and face-to-face teaching can continue. But the response has been one where the government hasn't told us exactly what the new information is, but they feel it's safer to make this call at the moment.
No, we do know what's happened, because what apparently has happened is because this has been investigated for quite some time. There's been surveys being conducted. It was all a little bit chilled out, it seems to me. And then what happened was, apparently, there has been a beam that has collapsed over the summer, and that has now made the government rethink and go, actually, this is very serious. We need to take action right in the here and now. We're going to close these units. That apparently is what's changed. But I'm saying apparently there's still a lot of it seems to be almost opaqueness about what's going on. You're really having to prod and poke the government in terms of getting out the official number and which schools it is. Why?
I don't know about that. I can understand why the government isn't going around saying it's these particular schools, because it's for each school to deal with their own parents, because the circumstances seem to me to be different in different schools. Some might indeed have to close, but others might just be closing one part of the school and can carry on. And rather than create a sort of sense of panic, I think it's important that the head teachers of those schools are able to communicate directly with the parents about the particular circumstances that pertain in that case. I mean, the government has spent billions. There has been £15 billion spent, at least, on maintaining and upgrading schools since 2015. And there is a big schools maintenance programme. I do agree with you that sometimes I feel that civil servants, there's a big churn in civil servants, and sometimes balls get dropped, and that might be the case here. But we are talking about, as I say, a very small number at the moment, and it's motivated by interests of the safety interests of the children.
Well, I heard, we're talking about 104 schools there or thereabouts, and I heard the school minister, Nick Gibb, he was being interviewed this morning, and he was saying that all of these schools currently hadn't been informed. That was back this morning. I'm thinking, well, about 100 and odd schools, how long does it take to actually put calls into those schools? Beyond me. Anyway, Paul Embry, you look less than impressed at what he's saying.
Well, I just think it's a sign that we're a bit of a undeveloping country, as I call it. We just seem to be broken in so many ways. Things seem not to work. The police don't do their job. You can't get an operation on the NHS. You can't see your GP. We can't protect our borders. And this seems to me, and without sort of being opportunistic about it politically, but it does seem to me to be part of a pattern of a country that is undeveloping, I think, in quite a rapid way, because I think with this concrete issue, as I understand it, it's not just schools, but it's the hospitals that are affected as well. And we've currently got a third of our school buildings which are beyond their lifespan. So we've got kids going into places that are clearly no longer fit for purpose. And I do think, and Daniel gives the figures in terms of the investment, but whatever they are, there has clearly been chronic underinvestment in education and in schools. And I don't think, by the way, that's a charge you can level just at this current Tory government. I think that has probably been a problem that's been building up for many years. And unfortunately, as before, it's going to be kids who are going to pay the price, because remote learning is not the equivalent of in-class learning. I think we saw during the pandemic the shortcomings of that, the impact it has on children. And it looks now that thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of them are going to be consigned to it. And for them, I think that's going to be a massive detriment.
Yeah, and just to be absolutely clear as well, because I found this quite interesting, many people are writing in saying who's invented and approved this stuff. Philip, for example, says it's like the cladding scandal all over again. Many people are pointing out to how dangerous this product is. I am not, I confess, a building expert, but I've listened to quite a few of them today. And actually, this kind of concrete, people are describing it like an aerobar. It's basically a lot lighter than concrete. It's got a lot of kind of air spaces in it. Which is why it seems to be used quite widely. And this is the point. This is not, as I understand it, a dangerous material that has no place in the construction industry. This is used all over the world. It's been used for many, many years. And to your point, it is used in buildings from prisons to hospitals. It's all over the place. So I don't think the suggestion is that this is an unsafe material and you've got to get it all out. I think what it is like any kind of building material over a passage of time, you know, things do kind of start degrading over time and it needs maintenance and all the rest of it. Am I right?
Oh, you're absolutely right that concrete does degrade over time, and this seems to be degrading faster. But I actually think, I'm not sure you're right in saying it's still in use. I think this is something that was used in buildings that were put up in a certain period.
Between the 50s and the 90s.
I thought it was used in other countries.
I think
I'm going to be wrong.
I don't know about other countries.
It was a 40-year period between the 50s and the 90s.
As far as this country is concerned, I don't think this is used anymore. Hasn't been used for quite some time. So the question is, what do you do with schools that seem to be, or other public buildings that seem to have used this material, seem to be perfectly okay? How quickly do you act? Now, you know, you can get that wrong. And it appears for this very small number of schools, probably it has been got wrong, and something should have been done earlier. But as I say, it is quite a small number of schools. There has been a lot of investment over the years.
There has to be, and you touched on it, Michelle, a regulation issue, because, I mean, when you mentioned Grenfell, and that's something that's close to my heart as a firefighter, how can you have, in a major advanced Western country like ours, these situations occur where at Grenfell, for example, the entire building was wrapped in flammable cladding and 72 people died as a result of it. How did we not, as an advanced Western country, have in place a regulatory system that prevented something like that occurring? You know, prevented effectively a high-rise residential building being doused in petrol. That's the equivalent of what happened.
But then is it, I mean, you'll know more about it than me. Surely no right-thinking individual would take a substance knowing that it's flammable or whatever else and shove it all in buildings thinking, oh, I know how to sort out these people. I'll make them deliberately unsafe. Surely what happens is, and correct me if I'm wrong, things get, constructed in materials and all the rest of it. And then as time passes, you then start learning more about different things and then new information comes to light and all the rest of it. Surely it's like that, isn't it?
No, I think if you look at the Grenfell Tower inquiry, which is still to give its main report, actually, I think there was clear evidence there of contractors, well, in fact, I'm sure there was, because I sat through parts of that inquiry, of contractors cutting corners effectively and doing so because they wanted to increase their profits. So actually, in some cases, using substandard materials because they wanted to make a fast buck. So there's clear evidence of that. The other question, of course, is why wasn't there the oversight? Why wasn't there the regulatory oversight that there ought to have been? And that speaks to the issue that we've got with these schools. And I tell you what, people will often, and the Tory government under David Cameron had this big thing about cutting red tape, you know, bureaucracy, red tape, regulation, there's too much of it. And it's an easy thing to say, it's an easy promise to make, but the truth is that regulation saves people's lives, whether it comes to things like health and safety.
But a lot of people, this is what my inbox is saying, a lot of people here are saying that they're blaming a lot of this on the building standards and the regs and all the rest of it. That is the point that's coming through thick and fast. Your party needs this like a hole in the head. I mean, Rishi Sunak must sit there, look at himself in the mirror and ask what on earth else can go wrong?
Well, the most important consideration at the moment, Michelle, is not what it means for the Prime Minister or the Conservative Party. It's what it means for children, their safety and education. And I think the government has probably taken the right stance here to act on the cautious side. I don't think, when we talk about, Paul talks about possibly hundreds of thousands of children learning remotely, I have no reason to think at the moment, from what I've read, that we're in those figures at all.
Well, the National Audit Office in June issued a report and said that 700,000 pupils were learning in schools that required major rebuilding or refurbishment. That's the National Audit Office in June.
Yeah, but they didn't say they're learning remotely.
Well, no, but if you're in a school that basically needs to be refurbed and all the rest of it, then you're going to have to be taken out of that school.
Yeah, the only way of doing any of these large programmes, as Paul will know and anybody else, is you have to have a programme with so much money over each year, over a number of years, and you spend it according to a certain list of priorities. And there'll always be schools waiting or other buildings waiting that are further down the list because you've prioritised the ones that need the investment more. You're never going to solve any governmental problem, at least, by saying we're going to magic up a whole bunch of money, throw it at the problem now. You don't have the resources to do it, you don't have the money, you don't have the staff, you don't have the people. You need a properly planned programme, and that's what the government's been doing over the last 15 years or more.
Hey, are you a parent or a grandparent that's got a child in one of these schools? Because you will be aware by now lots of these schools have been contacted. Let me know how you feel. Do you feel any resentment at the government, or are you just sitting there thinking, well, you know, pleased that we've been made aware in advance and now let's just hopefully get on and fix it? Let me know your thoughts.